Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Will Work for Patients, a free advice podcast dedicated to help chiropractors get on purpose and grow their practices. Get ready to tune in and turn up the volume of your practice marketing. And now, turning up the volume on his mic, big-time chiropractic advocate and your host, here is Frank Sardella.
I can barely wait for the music to end. Let's get on with it already. Well, thank you, Michelle, for that stupendous yet barely deserved intro. What a pleasure to have you as our announcer. I'm Frank Sardella, and I'm so happy to be with you here today again in our podcast show. This show is free for you to not only give you marketing help in your practice, but to keep you on purpose, to keep you pumped up, and to keep you going. And that's my commitment in a grassroots effort to make a chiropractic world. So welcome, and welcome back, you diehards. All of you have been hanging with us through our growth of our first 10 episodes. I'm so happy to be here with that. And I also happen to know we have some newbies in the audience. I've spoken to you personally. You know who you are. I know who you are. But an extra special welcome to you as well. I'm so glad you're here and tuning in finally. Who's stoked? I mean, I certainly am. Are you? Well, if not, in a minute or two here, you're going to be completely stoked. You absolutely will be. Now, before we move into this monumental episode, accolades, kudos, humble thanks to my colleague and very dear friend, Dr. Dan Margolin, episode 10, the marketing and practice building giant. You didn't think you could learn anything from a podiatrist, did you? But what a show. What a show indeed. Thanks again, Dr. Dan, for being here on the show. We just loved it. The show loves you. I've gotten great feedback for you. Awesome. Outstanding. Hey, can I tell you something? Talk about grassroots. Our Instagram photo campaign is growing daily. Thank you so much for participating. We get new followers every day, and the pictures are starting to flow in. And if you're out there on the sidelines, or if you're a rookie listener, get in the game, because the game is to take a photo of yourself with the cardboard sign, just like our spoke student, our logo, and post it on social media. If you don't have Instagram, tag us on Facebook, mention us on Twitter, post the photo there and do so. And if all else fails, you can always email me your shot of yourself at frank.screenings@live.com. Get creative with it. Do it out in front of your office or in an adjusting room. Do it with patients. Do it with your staff, whatever you want to do. And along with your feedback and suggestions, frank.screenings@live.com if all else fails. It's so much fun, so join in and have some, will you? Okay. What would you say if I told you we had quite an episode today? Quite an episode. I know what you'd say. You would say that I always say that. And I do, so fair enough, okay? But what would you say if I told you that quite an episode doesn't even begin to cover it? What would you say then? Well, that's what we have in store for you today. This is the big one. It's the one that I've been alluding to and hinting at for the last 10 episodes. And let's put it this way. Dr. Margolin is a giant. Now, imagine him with a few more years in practice, and if he was a chiropractor, and if he was in chiropractic. Are you getting the idea? Do you see how big this is? Goodness. I am so excited, so no more waiting. Let's do this. Today's episode. The title of today's episode is Don't Commit Marketing Suicide. You guys love my titles. I know you do. They just draw you right in, don't they? And today, sort of the subtitle would be 3 Fatal Mistakes That Can Cost You Everything. And I know you're going to want to hear about this. If for anything than just your survival in practice. This is vital and essential, so let's stay tuned. And today actually is more about the content. It's mostly about our special guest. And again, the surprise guest we've been waiting for. And here we go. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to dig into the legal and compliance aspects of marketing. I know it's a dreaded subject, but it is a welcome subject moving into our next 10 episodes for a lot of reasons, which you'll see throughout the episode. I want you to also realize that this is appropriate that we're doing this today because nothing that we talk about in these podcast episodes supersedes any rules or laws or guidelines of marketing provisions in your area that you may not even know about. Okay, and our guest today is very much going to school you on that today. And we're even going to give you some follow-up actions that you can do. Okay? Now, what are we going to talk about specifically? Well, there's a few things. Now, one of the things we're going to mention in today's episode is Groupon and social media coupons, and a lot of legal aspects, fee-splitting aspects, and different illegal discountings that are occurring unbeknownst to many of you doctors out there. And so we're really going to get into that. It's very important. Even if you haven't done it before, if you've ever thought about doing it, or even if you're not sure if you will ever do it, you'll definitely want to hear about this. Okay? We're going to talk about inducement-style discounting and marketing. Okay? And why the inducements are illegal and how to avoid them and what you can do instead of that. And then how marketing affects insurance billing. And there's a whole bunch of aspects about that I could get into right now, and I'm just not going to because I'm just so excited to jump into this. And if that wasn't enough, you know I won't let you down because, of course, we're going to have a top 10 list for you today. And this one is rather special for reasons why we're going to get to in a moment. But mostly, here's the moment that I've been waiting for. Now, let me introduce to you my guest. Talk about grassroots. My guest on the show today is a giant of giants in the Frank Sardella book of mythical chiropractic world-creating creatures, okay? She's been forwarding your profession for over 30 years. And among the valuable advice she has given a lot of you, she specializes in improving the financial performance of practices. That's probably one of my favorite things. Isn't that a great thing? Wouldn't you just love to hear from someone like that? Her reputation precedes her, and you've likely heard of her or even interacted with her yourself. I'm finding more and more people have. She's a certified medical compliance specialist. She is one of fewer than 100 certified in the chiropractic profession. She's not only well-known and sought-after speaker, but she's served in national and state-level chiropractic organizations. She sits on diverse boards and advisory councils and related to the profession, and she's frequently invited to address chiropractors in very important conferences and seminars around the country. Most significant to me is that she's actually a former colleague of mine and had become a close personal friend, and although neither of us have time to keep in close touch, my admiration for her only continues to grow. I consider her an absolute guru, and many of you have heard me tout her talents and recommend that you speak or consult with her. How's that for an introduction? Now, my only worry about having her here is how am I ever going to top this episode? But I'm willing to set that aside for a moment. All right, she's so humble, she's likely to say I'm overdoing it. And if I go on, I'm likely to embarrass her with all this praise. So let the woman speak for herself. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my extreme pleasure to introduce to you for the first time on Will Work for Patients from KMC University, Ms. Kathy Mills Chang. Welcome to the show, Kathy.
Wow, thank you, Frank. You're correct. I am absolutely blushing. I am delighted and thrilled that with that fabulous introduction. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm so happy that you're here finally. It's something that I've dreamed of having you here. And, actually 2 months ago, I didn't even have this show. And, when I came up with the concept of this, you were one of the very first people I thought of to have on the show. And I know you know how I feel about you and all that kind of stuff. But I figure, let's make it public, right?
That's right.
Right. And now you and I kind of go way back, right? Because I was just thinking about it before planning the episode today, and we date back to about 1995. So I just realized next year is going to be our 20th anniversary. So
wow.
So happy almost anniversary.
Happy almost. And does that officially give us geezer status? I'm just curious.
I don't want to go there. This is not an episode about that. So let's just sort of set that one aside for a little bit. But we go way back. We worked in a very large practice. Actually, it was a small chain of practices together. And, I still remember those days to this day, Kathy. All the lunches we had together and whatever, and just kind of like hanging out and working together and just being on purpose and all that kind of stuff. And I've sort of never lost that fondness for you. So I'm, again, so happy. First of all, I just want to clarify for the listeners, certified medical compliance specialist. I wonder if you can sort of like elaborate on that just a little bit to just explain what that is, because
Sure.
I think not everyone knows.
It's a certification that is available to anyone who elects to go through the course of study and to, take a very, very comprehensive and difficult test and remain certified by continuing education hours. I have to do 20 hours of continuing ed to stay up on things every year. But essentially, it allows me to be on the cutting edge of compliance, to be able to analyze and review information on behalf of doctors, and quite frankly could work on the dark side, on the insurance company side, because MCSPs tend to work, a number of them for the insurance company side of things. But that's something I've just committed that I'll never do. I will use my powers for good, only on the side of the good guys.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So you heard it here first on the show, guys, right from Kathy herself. That's great. Thank you for that clarification. And then I also wanted our listeners to know a little bit about your history. And I know I gave you quite a lengthy introduction, but I know you've come up through the ranks in chiropractic. You started out as a CA, and you've sort of moved on up. You've been a coach, you've been a speaker, you've been a lot of things. And maybe you can give us some highlights, and maybe we can sort of end up right at KMC University where you are today.
Sure. Well, I did start in 1983, so that is geezer status officially, and really was a CA in an office and really learned from the ground up. The story goes that I was brought in to replace someone who was pregnant and was going to have a month to train, and as usually happens, the best laid plans of mice and forthcoming babies aren't always clear, and after about 3 days, I was on my own. So I always credit the fact that I had that opportunity, though, because I think I really learned about insurance and reimbursement and those things really by trial and error, which was maybe the best tutor, if you will.
I bet.
And over those years, and I lived back in Arizona in those days, and I had the opportunity after growing that practice was the doctor, his wife, and me. And literally after a couple of years, what became very evident to me was that this was no longer going to just be a job. After having suffered really with severe asthma, to the point where, not so much by those early 20s, but literally in the hospital on a regular basis, and the doctor was, a very on-purpose chiropractor who said, you don't have to live this way, and it took a good year of regular treatment and nutrition and those kinds of things, but honestly, the handful of pills that I took every night went away, and chiropractic saved my life. And so for me, the purpose has always been more about giving back to the profession that I could never possibly pay back, and especially in the area of reimbursement and compliance, what I know is that I can serve in this capacity to help in a way, maybe vicariously serving through all of the doctors that I'm able to help or my group is able to help. And so that was the beginning. And from there, it just kind of worked. And it so happened that I had a job working for who was the president of the state association, got into speaking a little bit that way, moved then, family moved to New York, which of course is where I met you, and happened to, again, have the stars aligned. And really that's the largest chiropractic group practice in the state of New York that we worked for. And during that 6 years, we converted those practices to multidisciplinary, which gave me a whole other aspect and a lot more training, which was fabulous. And then another family move to Washington, D.C., and the stars aligned, and I ended up working for the American Chiropractic Association, again, learning really from the ground up about chiropractic, about documentation and Medicare and coding. And then after another move back to Denver, had the opportunity to begin doing some individual coaching and consulting, which I did with Breakthrough Coaching. And then about 7 years ago, decided that for me, I really wanted my focus to be only about documentation, coding, Medicare, reimbursement, really those compliance and reimbursement related topics. Not that I don't love marketing, because I do. And of course, as we'll talk about today, there's an aspect of compliance, certainly, and reimbursement in the marketing topic. But for me, I just knew what my passion was, and it's about not only helping doctors make more money, but then helping them actually keep that money by making sure they're compliant and no one's going to come ask for it back.
Wow. That's awesome. And listen, that folds right into our purpose here, Kathy, because one of the main purposes of this show, I mean, it's sort of only in the skin of being a marketing podcast, because we're looking to, the goal of this show is to create a chiropractic world and just reach every chiropractor everywhere and just get them the help they need using the talents that I have, just like you have. And it's amazing what parallel lives we lead like that. What a journey you've had, though, and just the amount of purpose that you just injected into this podcast. That's exactly where we're going with this. So thanks for that background. And what a background. So many similarities between our backgrounds, but I won't even presume to say I have even close to the, sort of the journey that you've been on. But we're both in it for the same reasons. And again, I'm so happy to have you here for that. So thank you. Let's just get started. I just want to jump right in. The first thing we always do in the episode is the top 10 list. And folks, I just want to just highlight something here. Today's top 10 list is not only related to the subject at hand, as I usually try to do with these, but it's the first one ever submitted by a guest on the show. And Kathy so graciously provided us with this one. And we discussed it yesterday in a brief meeting, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. And it's always nice to get perspective from, someone outside of the, the bounds of my coaching and consulting and whatever. And this is a really good one. So today's top 10 list is the top 10 excuses why doctors do things, and this is a Kathy invented word, non-compliantly. And I'm sure that's sort of a coined word in your industry there. So
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's just jump right in. Number 10, the rules change so often, how can we keep up? Now, I got to tell you, Kathy, I'm not that familiar with these issues and so on, but that one just reeks what it is, sort of.
Well, it does, because a lot of doctors forget that we are in the second most highly regulated profession in the nation. And we remember we're all about purpose and we're all about healing, but unfortunately we're doing so in an environment of regulation that is enough to choke a horse.
Yeah, I bet. And how can we keep up? That's a really good excuse. That looks like one I would personally use if I were in this game.
We hear it a lot.
I can appreciate that. Okay, number 9. I went to a seminar and the person there said it was okay. Kathy, I just want a quick comment on this one. I get the idea this happens more often than I would even think.
I'm always a big fan of, without tooting my own horn, saying, if you hear something from someone, ask for a reference. Because we have all manner of people who get, let's say like I did back in the 80s, asked to speak because I knew what I was doing. What are their credentials? Do they really know what they're doing? And unfortunately, as a profession, we don't have a whole heck of a lot of consensus. But if you ask for the reference, you're in great shape.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. And it's just, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. And also, just so you know, and you may not know this personally, but it is within this context that I'm usually recommending you, because often in my coaching, and my clients know this, I'm very often saying, look, I'm not an attorney and I can't tell you in your state or whatever what's kosher and what's not kosher. Oftentimes a lot of my clients speak up and say what is and isn't. So I'm impressed that a lot of them are on the up and up, but a lot of them aren't. They just don't know. And so I'm usually saying, if you're in doubt, check with your attorney, but also I always recommend you as well.
Thank you.
Good. Number 8, I'm too busy with my patients to keep track of every detail. Well, that one definitely folds into the how can we keep up. I think that one's fairly self-explanatory.
Well, it is, but the thing that I think a lot of doctors forget about is you have the perfect answer right at your fingertips, and that's your staff. Your staff is perfectly capable of managing this part of your practice. You just have to make sure they're trained.
That's brilliant. Brilliant. Love it. I'm gonna let it rest on that. Number 7, I'm a cash practice and the rules don't apply to me. That one's actually comical. Are you sure you didn't make that one up? They really say this?
Oh my goodness, I hear it all the time, because the perception is the rules only apply to insurance. The other perception is it's okay for me to ask Medicare, Medicare patients to pay cash, which we'll get to in a moment. But the truth is that again, second most highly regulated profession, simple as that.
Wow. And I think these next couple sort of tie into that whole thing, because the next one is I'm a non-participating provider and the rules don't apply to me. And then number 5 is I just charge cash for my Medicare patients, so the rules don't apply to me. Wow, there's a lot of, so the rules don't apply to me here.
It's true, because a lot of doctors really think that it's based on the context in which they practice that the rules will either brush up against them or not. And unfortunately, again, second most highly regulated profession, we have to understand where our particular circumstances fit into those regulations. And, you know, the most important thing of all is you may not touch a Medicare patient if you don't have a Medicare number. It's as simple as that.
Wow. Wow. Great information. And this next one is another doesn't apply to me. I'm just a part-time practice seeing a few dozen patients, so the rules don't apply to me. So they think practice size has something to do with it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately you touch one person and the rules apply to you because it is as simple as that.
Wow. Got it. And number 3, this one I sort of want to register a little protest on, not to you, but sort of that anyone would have this as an excuse, but it's too expensive to become compliant with everything. And I have to tell you, I'm going to tell you the number one reason why I disagree with that is because I've known you for a long time. I've known about KMC University for a long time and what you've been doing for doctors, and I've seen you, I don't know if I can say this. Can I say this? I've seen you find money for doctors that they weren't getting because, I don't know, they were billing a wrong code or something like that. And is this a kosher thing to say, or?
Without a doubt. I mean, that's part of the thing is, you know, for those that have this excuse, I refer them to an OIG report that came out in December for a doctor in California named Dr. Deep, who thought it was too expensive and got a $708,000 bill from the government.
Whoa!
So the bottom line is, what's expensive? Is that relative? And, you know, certainly one of the pieces of what we do in our world is that, you know, we've figured out a way to take this and make it inexpensive, you know, as long as you are willing to put in the time.
Yeah. And to that, I would also like to say to doctors who have that excuse, you know, think about, I know this is maybe not on a par with it, but, you know, it'd be tantamount to them, you know, being upset with their patients because their patients say it's too expensive to eat organic, or it's too expensive to, you know, do a whole treatment plan or to do corrective care or something, you know.
Absolutely.
It's just essential. It's something you must do to survive. Number 2, I don't even know what you mean by compliance. Actually, I didn't fully read that one before. I'm just realizing how funny that one is now.
Yeah, because you hear it could take on so many different meanings, and
yeah, you're right.
For each of those different types of practices, it could mean something different, and so, you know, it's worth someone's while to really put some energy into going, what do I need to physically do myself in my circumstance to be above board and doing the best I can.
Wow. Okay, and that brings us to the top of the list, the very tippy top of the list. Okay, the number 1 top excuse why doctors do things non-compliantly. Kathy, I think I'm going to let you read this one.
Everybody else is doing it. It must be okay. You know, I just literally heard a webinar by a doctor. His name, and I believe his name is Dr. McCool from Georgia, and he recounts the story of the FBI showing up at his door, and, you know, the questions that were being asked, and, you know, his lawyer basically saying to him, look, bottom line is, if the FBI is already there, they already have you figured out. They're not there to ask you questions. And when he started to look at what it was going to take to put his practice and his world and his family back together, because his mind was, I'm just Joe Blow out here on Buford Highway. They're not going to bother with me. They don't care what I'm doing. The truth is, yes, they do.
Wow. Wow. If there's anything to, like, make a point on in this episode or that you should focus on that story. Wow. That just blows me away. Okay, all right. Enough depression here. So let's
good stuff now.
Let's get into a more positive note. All right.
That's right.
So I had sort of delineated what we were going to go over, and I sort of want to kind of go just through the points, and, you know, we can elaborate considerably on these. But the first thing that you mentioned, and I've heard you mention this in previous conversations I've had with you and conversations with my clients. Also, I had an opportunity to see your marketing webinar that you do, and you talked extensively about this in there as well. But Groupon, actually, and I have to tell you, in my experience in coaching now, I see so many chiros using Groupon. So I'm seeing what you're seeing. Groupon's and social media coupons. There's some fee-splitting things about it. There's some illegalities, and there's different things in different states and illegal discounting. I'm just going to turn it over to you, and maybe you can sort of give us some insight on this. And what is the big hubbub about Groupon and social media?
And I'd be happy to. And Groupons in social media or any type of couponing, if you will, with a third party like this, actually takes on a bit of a two-pronged imagine it's the snake with the forked tongue, two pieces that are going to get you. The first piece of Groupon coupon-style marketing strategies in general that make them quote-unquote illegal is that its very concept is a violation of a federal law relative to what's called fee splitting. Because the idea is that if I elect to offer my initial visit, which typically, let's just say, runs $200, on Groupon for $75, and we'll get to part two in a moment, but that is part two. I can't really discount it that way. But assuming that was okay, I'm at $75. When I sell that on Groupon, and Groupon collects the money from the Groupon enrollee, if you will, Groupon keeps $37.50 and sends the doctor $37.50. So it is the very epitome of the definition of fee splitting, because we are paying this company to get us new patients. Now, there are most certainly some ways that you can do this precariously, carefully, etc. But we've really investigated the various states that have come right out and said this is the way you have to manage it if you're doing so. So, for example, back in about this time last year, the Minnesota Board of Chiropractic Examiners put out word on their website that talks specifically about why it is indeed fee splitting and what's not appropriate about it. So in their explanation, it might be permissible for the general public, someone that sells pies, somebody that sells sporting goods or something of that nature, or restaurants, for example. It is not permissible for healthcare providers, being the second most highly regulated group, because under these circumstances, it is a regulated tool that the chiropractors are using. So, for example, it constitutes fee splitting in that it derives from the fact that the company's getting paid on a per-person basis for the referral of patients, and that's really the sin, if you will. The doctor is quite literally just splitting their fee with an unlicensed third party, and licensees really, based on Minnesota, are basically saying, hey, this is not okay. Now, interestingly, and earlier this year, the state of Florida came in, their Board of Medicine came in and said, hey, we think that it's not considered a kickback under Florida law. So the FCA came out and said, this particular type of deliberation, they unanimously voted to say that the use of Groupon type advertising is not a kickback under Florida law. But this is one of the little nuances that one must understand when it comes to compliance. It doesn't matter if you're doing a Groupon and you have a federally insured patient, that federal law supersedes the state law that Florida has clarified. So, for example, if I'm a federal Blue Cross Blue Shield patient, a mail handler's insurance, certainly Medicare, those circumstances dictate that indeed I am now federally insured, therefore I jump up a level, if you will, to the federal guidance, which has been very clear about fee splitting. And I would say the last piece of this is really what the state of Illinois did, which is also very helpful, where they got into talking specifically about the idea of what one must do or what types of disclaimers one must include. For example, they said that it should say something like, this offer cannot be combined with your health insurance. Your insurance will neither be billed for any services offered under this ad, nor will you be required to provide your health insurance information at the time services are rendered. If you receive an explanation of benefits or other document showing that your insurance was billed for services, you should contact your carrier immediately. So this is the way that Illinois elected to interpret it. So for lack of a better word, it is as clear as mud, and therefore if I am a chiropractor interested in social media marketing, I'm going to be sure that I reach out to my people in my state to get the clearest, most specific rule. And if there's not a rule, then remember, like with all things, we jump up to the federal guidance, which is very clear. It's a kickback, it's fee splitting, it's not okay.
And what's crazy, Kathy, is that part of it is actually so obvious, but I have to tell you, it even escaped me. I didn't realize the fee-splitting aspect until you right there said it. And I already know how Groupon works. I know it's a 50-50 split. It's just it's like it just never crosses your mind.
Exactly.
That, it seems so innocent.
And the same thing happens, as we get into talking a little bit about inducement, this segue happens because the second fork of the tongue of the snake is the idea that if your actual fee for that initial visit, where it may include x-rays, it may include an exam and even some treatment, let's say is $250, and we're electing on the Groupon to bring it down to $100 and then, doing the fee splitting from there, the bottom line is that is also an illegal inducement, which is another federal law that we have to be careful about. There's a story that's just came out within the last 7 days about a chiropractor in Toms River, New Jersey, that for those same idea of kickbacks and fee splitting, he actually had a deal going with a medical office. For every doctor or every patient that was referred over to this particular medical office, he received some type of a kickback. Now, in all the years that we've both been in chiropractic, we've seen doctors want to thank for referrals, want to encourage referrals, want to incentivize referrals, and there's really nothing wrong with the concept of it. We just have to be careful that we're stepping carefully around the landmines that occur. And in this particular doctor's case, he actually was convicted of receiving bribes because that's the way they look at it. We are paying for the patients to come here. Now, the Stark laws and all of the other laws that prevail over these types of things certainly have safe harbors within them, or things that we can do. And what I find often is it's a matter of just what your policy says. This is how we do it here. We are not the droids you're looking for, people. This is how we do it, and we do it correctly.
Yeah.
So get some advice from an MCSP, from your board if need be, but there are certainly ways to carefully navigate those landmines to still get the majority of what you want, but to do within the confines of the rules that have been set for this, let's say it together, second most regulated profession. So
wow.
I do think that it's something that every time I see one of these FBI announcements that come up, if it has to do with the chiropractor, my computer is programmed to tag it and to save it, because often I think that doctors use that number one excuse. So everybody's doing it, it must be okay. So here's a guy that probably thought the same thing, that everyone's doing it, so why wouldn't I do it too? Unfortunately, it's okay unless you get caught.
It's just astounding the depth there is to this subject. It just seems like something and I could see where people brush it off as a subject too, because it just you don't see the depth of it until you look at it this way. So
exactly.
And I guess that's why people like you exist, to help with this exact thing. I mean, I really see the vital importance of your job. This is almost more. No, actually, I'm going to be bold and say it is more important than the marketing that you're doing.
Well, because, you went to all that school. You have the 8 years of school and all the loans to show for it. Do you really want to make a silly misstep like this and lose your ability to practice? And furthermore, if your purpose is to help people, how is this helping people? Because ultimately, if you lose your ability to treat or to take care of people, or because now you're broke because you've had to pay back, like our doctor in Georgia, over $2 million, how in the world are you going to survive people and meet your ultimate passion in being a chiropractor? You can't do it. I'd rather, it's kind of like the idea, and I teach this in seminar. I do a couple of slides showing some speedometers, and I will be the first to admit I'm not the gal that is right on the speed limit or a little bit below. I've got my comfort zone of 5 over, maybe even 10 over, depending on traffic, depending on the circumstance. Because we all have to decide for ourselves how much risk we feel comfortable with in our circumstances, and then be clear that we're free to choose, but we're also going to have to deal with the consequences of our choice. So isn't it true that 10 over's fine until I'm the lucky one that happens to get pulled over that day? And if I do, then I have to be willing to say to myself, you know what? I knew what I was getting into. I have no one to blame but myself, and I was willing to take this risk. The worry I always have for doctors is that they don't make that decision consciously, and instead they actually just think, oh, it must be fine.
Amen. I mean, to say that was a mouthful is like the understatement of the century, really.
Right.
I mean, that just is the way it is. Okay, well, thanks for that. That was really in depth, and I think everybody's going to get a lot of good out of that. And listeners, I really hope this is opening your eyes a little bit more than they've been opened in the past. I know even mine are, and I didn't think I could be surprised by you just because I know so much about this now. But just even the Groupon thing is like it was right under my nose, and I didn't even see that. So very, very valuable. The final thing I want to talk about really is marketing and insurance billing sort of together. They don't seem to go hand in hand, but I know they do, and I know you know they do, and you talk about this. And also, the big buzz with the clients right now and new guys that call in, Kathy, as I'm sure you know, I mean, it's almost just stating the obvious, but like you just hear, if I hear the word Obamacare like one more time and, different things they're going through with their insurance billing and whatever, and they're trying to market and they're trying to like live in this sort of new age of insurance and whatever, there's definitely some crossovers here. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how marketing affects insurance billing and things.
Absolutely, and to tee that up, what I think is important to understand is the concept of inducement. So what is an inducement? In other words, if you come to see me as a chiropractor, Frank, and I have a typical fee for what I generally do in an initial visit of $250. In other words, if I were billing your insurance, it would wind up being $250. That's called your actual fee. If that were in fact the case, and I say to you, oh, well, your blonde-haired buddy so-and-so referred you, you qualify for half off. You don't have insurance, so it's a quote-unquote time of service discount. The challenge is that there are only 3 states who have clarified what time of service discount amounts can be, and once again, we've got to go back to the idea of the federal guidance, which is between 5 and 15%. Wow. So if I'm a chiropractor and my routine initial visit's $250, and let's just make it easy math for the middle of the day here and say that 5 to 15%, we call it 10%. That means, am I really going to be helping that cash paying, uninsured, underinsured, partially insured like Medicare patient by giving them $25 off? That's not going to necessarily help them. And so for those reasons, I think we all know that we don't make our money and we don't impact our patients' lives on visit 1. And so it's always been my suggestion that we keep visit 1 as affordable as we can. One of the things that's a very important piece of or a tool in my toolbox with my clients and customers is something like ChiroHealth USA, which is a discount medical plan organization, allowing you to set those legal discounts not only for initial visits but routine visits and even the a la carte services if I were Medicare and I have to pay for my traction or my re-exams or whatever. But with that said, the concept of if I'm going to play in the insurance sandbox as a participating provider, I have certain agreements with that carrier that say, due to my contract, I'm willing and able to reduce the fee down to their fee schedule, and this patient qualifies for that. Some doctors use the excuse, well, if I'm already giving this deal to this carrier, why can't I do it for this cash patient? Very simple. They don't have the same contract. They didn't pay the same premium. They don't have a contract with you the way this carrier does. And a discount medical plan, fodder for an entire other podcast, I'm sure, will solve the majority of those problems. But in the context of how marketing affects insurance billing, I think that the guidance that we got from the Department of Regulation in Illinois makes the best sense of all. And that is that if you are going to do any type of marketing that includes reducing that initial fee, in my opinion, the safest thing to do is that if indeed you have insurance, the insurance will not be billed. It will simply be this cash amount, and that's the first visit. And you have to make a decision as a chiropractor if that works for you. If I came in under these circumstances, then I'm willing to forego the insurance. Some people will say, but I have a contract that says I have to bill every single thing. Under these circumstances, then get with your provider relations people, tell them what's going on, and write policy in your compliance policy that says this is how we do it in order to stay compliant and clean. Because what a lot of doctors do, that's a huge mistake, is they'll say, oh yeah, well, the deal was for $50. Your copay's, more than that, so we're going to just waive your deductible or copayment because you came in with this deal. And that is the most heinous of sins. You cannot ever waive a deductible or copay unless it's within the confines of a documented and clarified and verified financial hardship policy in your practice. And if you do that, there's certainly ways to help those who are truly needy, and that's why your entire fee system is such an important consideration for you. How am I going to interact with all of these different kinds of people? So if I'm going to actually play with offers, one of my biggest ones I see are people that will do the care to share idea, that for all intent and purposes is, hey, Frank, you're my patient, and I'm going to hand you 3 cards that allow you to refer others, and their initial visit is blah-de-blah. Again, if you want to do something like that, you have to make sure that the insurance plans you participate don't consider that an inducement, and if those patients come in that have insurance, what is your policy about how you'll bill insurance for that? Do we waive the care to share discount and go with our normal process, or do they use the care to share discount and it's cash? But some doctors think they can have their cake and eat it too, and the truth is they just can't.
Can I just say, I just want everybody to know that this is, you got to talk to someone like Kathy, because the thing is that none of this is not only just not obvious, it's just who would ever think of any of this? In practice, particularly like you said, the whole plug, they went to chiropractic school 8 years and they got their student loans and whatever. We're always complaining how, they didn't get any marketing training, and that's why guys like me exist. But things like this are so much more vital than that, and I just can't even believe how many intricacies there are that you could just not know about. I'm blown
no
away.
Doubt.
I'm just blown away.
And it can seem very much like doom and gloom. I want to be very clear that compliance, I happen to be excited about it because I know the potential. In my experience, most people that work to become more compliant wind up actually making more money because they actually clean things up and find things they're not doing. But this is not about, going pee-pee in the Cheerios, so to speak. This is really about, hey, how can we look at what we're doing, do it bigger, better, faster, stronger, more effective, but clean, so that you can put your head on your pillow at night and feel good about it. And I guess the final point of that is, there are ways to do it right.
Yes.
Trust me. Let's just do it right. It's easier.
I agree with that, and thank you for the silver lining. I appreciate that, and just to reiterate too, I mean, I've heard some pretty miraculous recovery stories you've talked about and telling me about some different cases you've worked on in terms of docs and stuff like that, and folks, there is a silver lining to this because it's not all doom and gloom. The doom and gloom part is what you don't know, but when you find out, you can actually become a lot of these things, just not knowing about them and not being compliant, I'm starting to realize is what is keeping a lot of you non-prosperous. The sort of like underneath everything, it's this hidden thing that's holding you back. And when you get it in, right? You've seen this, Kathy, that you've seen practices flourish as a result of just handling that one factor. All of a sudden, it's like the floodgate opens.
Because who knows what subconsciously is going on that you're actually putting stops on what you do because you're just not sure.
Exactly.
I want these doctors to have certainty around it.
Great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Have we sufficiently covered the marketing and insurance billing thing? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we need to squeeze out of that, or you think we adequately covered that?
Well, I think the 3 takeaways are, number 1, if you are offering some sort of incentives, make absolutely sure that you've clarified with any carriers you work with that it's okay, and always put a disclaimer that it's not applicable for any federal program. I think that's important. Then I think the 3rd takeaway really is never monkey with the copay and deductible.
Good advice. Good advice. And I've seen it done so many times. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So now I know it's a red alert as well, but I know even more. So thanks for enlightening us on that. I normally do a recap here, and I'm going to do a little bit of a recap. And Kathy, what I'd like maybe is to make it an interactive recap today, sort of deviating from tradition here, just because you had so much to say, and I don't know how much I could recap of what you said, but just sort of going back over Groupon's social media coupons. What would we say the takeaway would be for that, or some good piece of advice that they should do from here forward?
If it's something you want to do, make sure you've cleared it with your board of examiners, not your chiropractic association board. Be very clear about any plans that you participate in or work with, and how you're going to manage that. And again, always safest to avoid the federal programs, absolutely. And, in my opinion, I'd rather see you not have to give up part of that money, but maybe set your initial visit fee with a discount medical plan like ChiroHealth USA instead, at an amount that you're comfortable with, that can work for everybody.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm a firm believer in that, too. As a matter of fact, Kathy, I can tell you, between you and me and our listeners, we're working on getting someone from ChiroHealth USA on the show. We actually want to do a whole episode on it. I'm pretty impressed with the product. So
It is the savior of our profession. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. And you heard it here first. Let's recap then. Inducement-style discounting in marketing. What should we overall summarize?
This is really just the idea of offering something to someone, whether that's another doctor, whether that's another entity of some kind, to give people a reason to choose you over another doctor. The federal statute is very, very clear, and once again, if you find that it is appropriate or okay within certain confines, always put that disclaimer to avoid the federal programs, because it is a federal law.
Got it. Great. Good. Very good advice. And then lastly, on how marketing affects insurance billing, well, you just said that. I'm going to reiterate it because I've seen it so many times, but don't mess around with the copays and deductibles is the moral of our story today, yes?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything to add to that, or does that sum it up pretty well?
No, just, it's either you're in or you're out, in my opinion. You're either if you're going to do some sort of an incentive or inducement, don't involve the insurance. Only after the patient's been accepted as a member of the practice, then have a conversation about how they might have some support from a third party to assist them with their financial responsibility.
Okay, and there you have it. You heard it here first. What a recap! What an episode! That was fantastic, Kathy. Thank you so much for all of that. It was so informative. I feel like it was like 10 episodes in one.
Good.
So that's good. Okay, the last word. Who gets the last word? I do. After all, it's my show. So what should we take away from today's podcast? If anything, I sincerely hope that you take to heart one thing, and one thing only: compliance. It's the whole reason I had Kathy Mills Chang here on the show. This is not a nice to have kind of thing. It's an absolute must, and I hope you understand. If you didn't understand that before the show, I hope you understand that now. If we're going to expand grassroots and make this chiropractic world we've been talking about, you, my good friends, need to expand beyond even your imagined ideals. And if you're going to do that, then you need to market yourself, your practice, the care you give, everything. And if you're going to promote, you need to comply with the rules of the game. As unfortunate as that may sound, and as crazy as some of these rules are, and I know in some of the states, I'm not going to mention any names, but I've seen some pretty crazy rules. The only thing that can stop us in our concerted effort to desubluxate Earth would be marketing mistakes and violations made unnecessarily by you. One of the few practitioners in your community who truly means well and does well. We need you, so don't make these mistakes, okay? Hey, wouldn't it be amazing if we look back on this moment and we're able to say this is where it all changed? I'd love to have that moment with you, and as I said, I'm going to say that in every episode. Will today's episode be the turning point of the game for you? One new patient a day, maybe that episode, hiring those marketing CMAs, new patient hotspots, double your screening results, doctored the movie, tips from a podiatrist, instant CalMag C, compliance and proper marketing, even ambulance chasing. Take your pick. We have quite a collection growing here. Will this be the turning point for you? I hope so. Okay, so Kathy, first of all, thank you profusely. I'm bowing down at your feet for having you here. So thank you so much for being on the show today. What I want to do is I want to make sort of a contact point now. I want to connect our listeners up with you and KMC University. KMCUniversity.com is brilliant. Is that the main website I should send them to?
It is, and depending on when they get there, in the next 30 days, our brand new website will be up and just absolutely killer. Can't wait to have it done.
I can't even picture anything better than what you have up there, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, it's going to be so much better.
I can't wait. So KMCUniversity.com, and then contacting you, how about an email address?
Best is always info, I-N-F-O, at kmcuniversity.com. KMC, so it kind of like Kathy Mills Chang, kmcuniversity.com. Info at kmcuniversity.com.
Great. And I even see a toll-free on the website, 855-TEAM-KMC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, 832-6562 for those of you phonically challenged who don't have the numbers on your letters corresponding to numbers on your phone. 855-TEAM-KMC. Brilliant. As always, you can always fall back on frank.screenings@live.com. Any inquiries from me will get directly to Kathy, and we will make sure her staff get back to you on whatever questions you have. I say we have Kathy back. What do you say? Kathy, would you like to come back to the show? I really enjoyed having you here.
Oh, it would be my pleasure. We could dig in a little deeper on some of these for sure.
I would love it. As a matter of fact, I could even see us doing a spin-off show, you and me. So that would be wonderful.
Would I get to tell everyone what your nickname is if we do a spin-off?
Yes, absolutely you would. But let's leave them in mystery for now on that. We'll keep it between us. Okay, good. One more thing I want to plug. Marketing with Your Pants Down was the title of the seminar. Kathy, one of the things I love the most about you is just your creative ideas and your ways of referring to things. I don't remember the peeing in the Cheerios or something you said today. You're always just full of those things, but Marketing with Your Pants Down, absolutely brilliant. We were at one point offering it to our clients. I think we still are. How about giving them a little incentive to maybe do that seminar or something? Could we do that?
Absolutely. So we have on our website, a whole arm of things that are really our products that allow you to just purchase and work on your own, build your own training library. And this webinar is one called Are You Marketing with Your Pants Down? And really digging deep into some of these topics and subjects. And because of my affinity for you, Frank, and for your listeners, we'd be delighted to offer 50% off of that. It's normally $149 on demand, but we'll do that half price. And you would go and buy it as though you're normally buying it right there in our store. And at checkout, use the coupon code POD50, P-O-D 50, and you'll get 50% off.
Woo! I love it. Thank you so much. You're so generous. But you know what? I'm not satisfied. You got to do something else. Is there something else you can give them, like for free or something? What else can you do?
Well, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is, as I said at the very beginning, when you do get a certain person to, if you're in a seminar and somebody tells you something, ask for a reference, we pride ourselves on our almost 300 fact sheets that when we have an issue, we research it, we reference it. And I've got 4 or 5 really nice fact sheets on the topics that we talked about today. What if I made those available for your listeners?
I'll take it.
Awesome.
So there you have it. Are You Marketing with Your Pants Down webinar? Get 50% off. I guess at the checkout you put in code POD50.
Yes.
That's 50% off the $149 pricing, so that's roughly $75. Good.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 5 fact sheets out of your award-winning fact sheets. I don't know. I added that in there.
They should be if they're not.
Okay, good. Fantastic. And Kathy, thanks. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let's just make sure that they know how to ask for those fact sheets. Why don't you just email my staff at that email address I gave a moment ago, info at KMC University, and just reference that you were on this podcast, and I'll set aside the ones that I think make the most sense, and they'll be happy to send it right out to you.
Wonderful. And we'll also have information on all of our social media, including anything that happened in this show. Kathy, perhaps we can talk later about some of these things that you mentioned, like things posted on the Minnesota website. I'm always posting links on the social media, and also you'll see links to KMC University and everything else on the social media following this podcast, so do keep up with us there. And Kathy, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay. Next episode, I don't even want to talk about it because I'm going to be buzzing from this one for days, maybe even weeks, but no worries. You know I always come through with the good ones. I will work for patients. Incidentally, so will Kathy Mills Chang. So, will you? Come on, guys, let's do this, huh? Kathy, once again, I can't thank you enough. I know I've been saying it over and over, and I gave you this big build-up, but you don't know what it means to me to have you here, so thank you so much. I know if anybody's as on purpose as I am, it's you, and we always bond on that. And if anything, it was a pleasure just to spend an hour. How often do we get to spend an hour together?
Not very often.
Not very often at all. So thank you again. And I thank you on behalf of the listeners. Quick plug for free resources. Remember the YouTube site, the blog. Chiropracticmarketingadvice.com, articles you can use to help you in marketing in your practice. YouTube videos you can use. Go to screeningexperts.com, scroll to the bottom, look for free resources. You'll see our YouTube site. It's expanding. We're going to be adding more resources that you can use for free, but right now there's 2 videos you can use that explain chiropractic and talk about chiropractic, define chiropractic. You can use them. You can embed them on your website, and you can also share them in social media, so please do. As always, listen, subscribe, download. Go to willworkforpatients.com to find all of our social media. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Like us on Facebook. When you subscribe, if you're an Android user, we recommend BeyondPod in the Google Play Store. It's a great app to download and listen into the episodes. Obviously, if you're on iOperating system, iTunes, or iPhone or iPad, iPod, we're on there as well. You search Will Work for Patients in the podcast app. And, of course, we have the RSS feed. You can listen on the website. And now we're putting the episodes on YouTube as well. Okay? Remember, this is a grassroots effort to make a chiropractic world like we all want. So let's make every episode count, huh? I know I can count on you. So, my friends, we've come to the end of an epic episode of the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. On behalf of myself, the amazing Kathy Mills Chang, our announcer Michelle, and the rest of the Screening Experts crew, I thank you so very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon for yet another memorable episode of Will Work for Patients. So long.
Be sure to subscribe and share. Will Work for Patients has been brought to you courtesy of Screening Experts, bringing unscripted simplicity to chiropractic marketing complexity. Today's episode, copyright Screening Experts LLC, musical score composed and arranged by Frank Sardella ASCAP. For more information, visit screeningexperts.com.